This is Avery, and you are listening to Talking Bird, the special edition.
A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, a great adventure took place.
Talking Bird, a special edition.
Hello, and welcome to Talking Bird, the special edition, episode 52. I am your host, Robert Zachary, along with my co-host, John Llewellyn. Hello, John.
Good afternoon.
So you're not going to hear this, but you'll hear it if you listen to the episode. But I would like to just do a quick shout out to Avery and thank her for the station ID or the intro for this week. Was hanging out with some family this weekend, and I am one of those kind of people that will put kids to work for free to promote my podcast. So what's up with you, John?
What's up with you? You mean Star Wars wise or like life wise?
You can talk about life or Star Wars.
Oh, well,
that's up to your.
Not much is up. That's pretty much. I've been watching. Even more, they've posted even more of the Star Wars Celebration panels on YouTube. Like even some of the panels that did not make it onto the live stream. So I've been watching those. I've been, my usual doing some work here and there, trying to get out and get some exercise. But it's so hot. It's so hot. And I know, like people don't like hearing other people complain about how hot it is or like what the weather is like in their city. And I know that other people who live elsewhere in the country think that it's hot where they are. No, it's really hot in Texas right now. It's so hot in Texas right now.
So are you under this proverbial heat dome that they're talking about?
I don't know. I just assume that Texas is under a heat dome like permanently.
Yeah, I think the Pacific Northwest is or something corn cloud or heat dome.
Corn cloud.
I don't know what it was. We lost all my favorite.
Is that one of those? Have you been playing that? Have you been playing that Pokemon game?
Oh man, I tell you, I was down in Alki, which for people that aren't familiar with Seattle, is kind of our, I guess, urban beach is what it is. It's really there's a couple in the Puget Sound. There's a couple beaches. They're never like. It's not like California type beaches, but there's area people can play volleyball, so I guess it is. But it's a very small, thin beach, and people love to get out and park and just walk. There's a nice 4-mile stretch you can walk, and we were out there, and it was dark because we started late, and we got down to the end of it where all the there's Starbucks and taco places, and there's like these guys just standing around on their phone, and at first I'm like, what happened? Was there some terrorist attack and people are just glued to their phones? And it's like, and I pick up my phone and all of a sudden before I even look at it, I go, Pokemon. They're all playing Pokemon.
Did they find a corn cloud?
Corn cloud, heat dome, Chachibi, Bababa, or whatever don't these Pokemon have? Ba. Yeah, I should say it's like, speaking of influence, it's kind of like, hey, wait a second.
Hey, wait a second.
I was thinking about Avery, who gave us this intro. She's more of a Pokemon fan now than Star Wars, and I think she kind of admitted it to me this weekend.
Well,
kids today, man.
Can't win them all.
You can't win them all.
But you can catch them all.
Ooh, naughty.
That's the best I got.
So as far as like these Star Wars panels, is there anything that I may have missed that I need to check out? I didn't see it in the notes.
Some of it will talk a little bit about later in the show today, perhaps. But I guess this isn't really like, let's talk about it on a podcast worthy. But the Art of the Force Awakens panel I thought was kind of neat. Mostly they just went through designs, for different aliens and ships and things on the show. Some of this artwork and some of these stories were already part of, say, the Art of the Force Awakens book, or, they had been told in other venues or, in other panels. But, some of them are already, I think this kind of story isn't that interesting, but, for some of these, their story, like, oh, how did you create this creature? And they're like, well, J.J. Abrams just told us to come up with an alien, and so we drew a bunch of aliens, and then he picked this one, right? Like, it's not really an interesting story, but I think it's always important to, like, keep that kind of thing in mind when you're watching these movies or when you're looking at this stuff. Like, some of this is intentional, and some of this is, like, J.J. Abrams or Gareth Edwards or Rian Johnson or whomever, would say, it's going to be, I want a creature that looks kind of like, something that we might have seen in the cantina from A New Hope, or, I want a creature that kind of, they have sort of a specific purpose or a specific look in mind initially. But, I think it's also important to know that for a lot of these, they just kind of, they're given such a broad range of, they're given a lot of discretion of like, just show me some aliens. And this is how it was with George Lucas too, right? Right. Especially with the prequels, he'd be like, show me some aliens, and then I'll say whether I like them or not. Yeah,
he would just sign off on stuff.
Yeah. And so seeing like how they go through that process of like, well, here was kind of the initial thing that signed off on, and then we had to kind of rework it, or it would just be the sketch of the head or the face of this alien, and they like that. But okay, well, now if we're going to make a sculpt of this thing, we have to figure out what the body looks like. And so, just kind of seeing that process go through, I always personally think is kind of neat. And you learn a little bit about Star Wars, you learn a little bit about how movies are made generally, and it's very interesting to me. But there was another one in that panel. It was a little more interesting where the Abenados, so your Eloastes et al.
I didn't know they had a name. Like
yes, of course, Robert.
Of course they did.
Yeah. It sounded like, at least from the way they told it sounded like that was kind of that was the artist making a conscious decision of, hey, in Star Wars we have all of these humans running around, and we have, different kinds of humans that we see, or humanoids, or, whatever you want to call the people that they just have actors who aren't in makeup. Right. But, this one of the concept artists wanted to come up with another species that you would kind of see in multiple places doing different kind of things. They would just sort of add to the larger universe of like, oh, I see, there's that creature, one version of that creature is a pilot, and now here's like a huge version of that creature without any arms that we see, lugging something around on Jakku, and now we see like an older version of that species on the government planet, and that kind of thing. And so that was something, it sounds like the artist kind of came up with that idea and drew a bunch of sketches, or drew one or two, and then had to kind of sell J.J. Abrams on that idea. And then once he did, he kind of, Abrams was like, yeah, okay, he signed off on it, and then they kind of went from there. So that stuff like that, I always think is interesting. And so that one was good. And like I said, the Marvel panel is up now, and we'll touch on a few of those. And the Hasbro, or I guess that, never mind, that was from Comic-Con, but the Marvel panel from Celebration is up, and that's a little less interesting, but there's still some, there are some good images. They talk about a little bit about the future of where some of the current comics are heading, and that we'll touch on a little bit later.
Oh, cool. I've not seen that one. I was gonna do. I had the whole thing about Comic-Con, but maybe we should just we have a lot to talk about that Star Wars.
We do have a lot to talk about.
So let's just stick with Star Wars. I was
going to
talk about some trailers from Comic-Con, but something.
Talking about Star Wars.
Let's talk Star Wars. This is a Star Wars podcast.
Yeah.
So I guess the big news for here was that Episode 8 is wrapped.
Yep.
Principal photography. I mean.
Yeah, right. I'm sure they'll do reshoots and post-production that they still have to get to.
Because Daisy Ridley and Mark Hamill had wrapped the week before Celebration.
Yeah.
And so this was, obviously, 8 has wrapped. I think this was probably like second unit stuff. I get the feeling that there wasn't really... it wasn't like, I don't think they put up a picture of any of the actors or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ryan Johnson may or may not have been involved.
Okay.
I'm not sure. They just, basically the way they announced it is they showed them like slating the final
with the big,
of the film.
Large slate.
So I don't know whether Ryan Johnson, like you said, it may have been second unit stuff or, just a really small scene like, oh, we just need a shot of someone's arm like reaching to grab a thing. But yes, episode 8 is wrapped, and so that's kind of exciting.
So it's kind of
now we're headed to post production, and eventually maybe we'll start learning more about this movie. Like we talked about last week, they're obviously going to give Rogue One its opportunity to shine. They don't want to detract from the promotion of and ticket sales for Rogue One, so. We're probably going to hear a little bit less about Episode 8 in this run-up to it actually coming out in theaters, maybe than we did about The Force Awakens, certainly. But one thing in particular I think is interesting is that we basically have not heard anything more about either Laura Dern's role, and I had even forgotten that she was in it until I started putting this thing together. Right, Laura Dern is in Episode 8, remember, and we haven't really heard anything about her. And Benicio del Toro, who plays like another villain or something to that effect. We haven't really heard anything about his shooting schedule. We haven't seen him on set or Laura Dern. The only real information we've seen that's come out about Episode 8, it seems like, or the vast majority of it anyway, it's the filming they did in Ireland specifically with Mark Hamill and Daisy Ridley. In particular, there were a handful of leaked images from Dubrovnik, and everyone kind of standing around on a boat or whatever. But a lot of this movie is still, I think, kind of in the dark, and even. There were some rumors about plot points for this movie, but again, those all involve Mark Hamill and Daisy Ridley on Actu, however you pronounce it. That's my official name for that planet. It's Actu, however you pronounce it, is the name of that planet.
Okay.
But so I wonder if this is going to be a similar situation, and if they're going to do this for every subsequent movie. Where the same thing that they did with The Force Awakens, where it seemed like we were learning about all these different characters and all these designs and plot points and everything, and then they're like, oh, by the way, this is all just like the first 20 minutes of the movie,
right?
And there's all this other stuff that happens, and so I wonder if they're okay releasing like, hey, look, Daisy Ridley and Mark Hamill are in Ireland and doing a thing, because they know, like, all right, well, this is the first 10 minutes, and then they leave that planet and they go do something else. And we're going to keep that part a secret, but we're just going to we're going to satisfy everyone's appetite for news by just telling them what's at the beginning of the movie. Right. And who cares? It's the beginning of the movie. But even then, it's like, well, I don't necessarily want to know what's at the beginning of the movie either,
Yeah, it's kind of like, well, I'd like a little bit of news, but I don't want any spoilers. I mean, as much as the only thing I heard from a panel, and it must have, obviously it was I forget which panel it was.
The future filmmaker.
Yeah, and Ryan Johnson was there, and he basically said something about that he was really excited for everybody to see Kelly Marie Tran character, who was kind of like an unknown quantity.
Mm-hmm.
Because isn't her thing is that she's kind of a YouTube star? Is that?
I really don't know much about her, but that doesn't necessarily mean that she doesn't have like her own TV show or something.
Right, she might be on something. I'm not particularly familiar with her. But I think that he's at least either he was just trying to like give out some information, or he was teasing. It's like, this might be something, it's going to be kind of like, I have a feeling she might be like playing an alien or a droid or something.
Really?
I don't know why. Why. It's just the kind of like, maybe because if her background is kind of in a comedic sense, that maybe they tend to put, But then again, it's true. Like, it's Star Wars. It could be anything. She could just,
Yeah, I guess she did a bunch of stuff for collegehumor.com.
That's
what it
yeah.
looks
See,
like.
that's why
as well as some sitcoms here and there. I mean, one thing I did learn. I guess this was from the Art of the Force Awakens panel as well. Or was it? No. This was from the Marvel panel. It was about Poe Dameron, and I can't remember if this was how widely this was known, and whether you and I have talked about this, but early the initial scripts had Poe Dameron dying in the movie. I assume when he escapes the First Order, that TIE fighter crash. But then they decided, let's bring him back. Like, we don't want to kill off this character yet, if at all. But so the reason the Shattered Empire comic is about Poe Dameron's parents, and specifically his mother, is because at that point in time, they went to, they said, okay, they went to the writer and the artist and said, can you do, we want you to do, Shattered Empire just takes place, during and then immediately after the events of Return of the Jedi. And so at that point, Poe Dameron was such a minor character, they thought that they could say like, oh, well, what if we make it about Poe Dameron's parents? And the story group is like, yeah, sure, fine. No one's going to do anything with this character. No one's really going to care about who this person's parents are. If that's what you want to do, fine. But now it's turned into like, oh, his parents are like they fought for the rebellion and his mother was a great pilot. And, so it again, just not again, but, it speaks to both the kind of intentionality and this idea that, we think that because there's a story group that there's this overarching plan for everything, and there sort of is, but there's also room for this kind of change to happen with where the story goes and who these characters are. But then also talking about Kelly Marie Tran, I mean, if you remember, for a while they were auditioning kind of bigger name actresses, and John Boyega was like reading lines with them and doing scenes with them. And then when The Force Awakens came out, they said, oh, we didn't realize these new characters were going to be so popular, so we have to rewrite the script to like give them bigger roles. And so they kind of maybe scaled down the part. And I don't know if Kelly Marie Tran got the role that was initially supposed to go to like Gina Rodriguez or something, or if this is a different role entirely. But yeah, so I don't know. Like you said, since her background is in comedy, it seems like maybe they scaled down who this new person was going to be and put her into like the funny wisecrack, maybe funny wisecracking like new character who's sort of their friend, but doesn't really take up a lot of screen time because, Poe Dameron's still around, so we'll just let him do stuff.
You bring up that Poe Dameron thing, and it makes me realize something that I've repeated on this show many times, is that initially when J.J. Abrams approached Oscar Isaac with this role, he turned it down because it was small, and he said he's getting tired of dying in the first 20 minutes of everything I'm in.
Right.
And then he goes and like rewrote it.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it in retrospect, what did he do other than just have him show up at the end? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They never. I mean,
I guess he's the one who blew up the planet. He's the one who blew up Starkiller Base. It's not really, you can't see him. You just see his X-Wing in the distance, but he's the one who like shoots down like 8 TIE fighters in 30 seconds or something. But I mean,
it's kind of like, but it's funny because when he shows up kind of unannounced on the attack of what's Maz Kanata's? Taco Dana. You're kind of like, hey, how did he show up?
Right.
That kind of thing. And it's almost to the point where it's like, I wasn't even like, oh, wow, kind of thing. It was just kind of like, oh, he's not dead. It was kind of, I guess my point is that I'm beating around the bush, is that his whole reintegration into the last part of that movie is very ham-handed.
Yeah, no, well, even his. I mean, I rewatched that movie recently, over the weekend. Last weekend, and yeah, his explanation for what happened. He was like, "Oh, I got thrown from the crash, and I woke up and it was nighttime, and you were gone." I was like, "Where did you get thrown? Like, how far away were you that you that Finn couldn't find you?" And then, like, you didn't wake up until it was night. Like, what happened to that?
I know.
They had to like, I got thrown from the crash, and then you were gone. So I safely got off the planet somehow.
Yeah, I know that there was some deleted scene or something that may have addressed that something bad happened on Jakku. I forget. I'll be honest. It's like these Force Awakens deleted scenes where I would consider completely unessential watching. You know what I mean? It's not like oh wow, the big scenes or the the aborted Wampa scenes, or the version of Jedi where Obi-Wan says they say things differently about Luke's parentage or whatever, and they scrapped it. Yeah, it's so I don't go back to them, but I think there was a quick thing where she gets like a piece of ticker tape or something from an actor who I forget. God, I forget his name, but he's been in a lot of. He's an English actor. I've seen him in a ton. He was in Prometheus and stuff like that. But he always has just a couple lines. Yeah, but it's. I mean, as far as it's obviously like you said, we don't have a lot of information, so I'm just kind of speculating from the kind of roles that people have been in. I mean, I've heard a little bit that spoiler alert, that Laura Dern's character may be either some kind of peer of Leia's, or some kind of rival or something.
I can't remember. Did we speculate that maybe she would play Yvonne from the Leia comic?
Oh, did
we? Or did I?
I think you might.
Did
have.
I mention that, or maybe some website said like, "Oh, here's a blonde lady who's in the new canon. Maybe that's her."
And that is possible. I would have, 2-3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, I would have poo-pooed that. But now that we're starting to cross-pollinate from comics to TV shows, and
Yvonne shows up in Life Debt too.
Okay, so maybe. I mean, it'll be interesting. I tried to watch.
I think she's been such a minor character lately, like so far, that suddenly thrusting her and casting someone like Laura Dern in that role would be like, wow, they really beefed up that character. That's interesting. Unless Laura Dern is like, yeah, my kids like Star Wars. I'll be Leia's pilot friend, sure. Right, but that's the thing. We haven't heard anything. We don't know how big of a role she has, or with Benicio del Toro, we really have no really clue like what he. Everyone's been so preoccupied. It seems like trying to figure out who Rey's parents are, or who Snoke is, that like the people who do all of this wild speculation on the internet about Star Wars, like that's where all their energy has gone, and so they haven't actually like spent time thinking about the movie that's actually getting made right now.
Yeah, I'm so
like, so who is Benicio del Toro?
I'm so close to buying one of those "Your Snoke Theory Sucks" T-shirts from Steele Saunders, because it's like, who cares? It's, I don't know. I think honestly though, if you think about it, Star Wars has totally set us up to, like, I'm your father, and this guy had no father, and I'm your sister, and that kind of, I think, you'd be remiss if you wouldn't say, well, something, you set the table with these implements. Don't be shocked when people want to do that. But yeah, I know it is interesting how people like that is the speculation, I guess, is the fun part. It's kind of, I dipped back into the Clone Wars, and I think I could speak for both of us and say that neither one of us were huge Clone Wars fans.
Correct.
And I thought, well, I really, I'm excited about Rogue One. It's like I haven't seen anything yet to make me not be excited about Rogue One. So I'm like, how do I get ready for this? And I'm like, well, maybe I can go back and watch those season 5, episodes where Saw Gerrera is in it. And I was just like, within like 5 minutes, I was just like out. I was like, no, thanks. Because I don't believe that this performance, and no ding on the guy that that did the voice acting or the art, how
Mm-hmm.
the thing. It's just I didn't finish it, so I have no room to complain really.
Yeah.
It's just it was like a weird love jealousy thing where,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, this is not. I don't enjoy that aspect of Star Wars. And now if you do, more power to you. I think you're probably going to get a little bit more of it in the future, but for me, anything when it's like that, when it's just, I like really simple stuff. It's like, maybe a crossword, kind of like Luke and Leia and Han on the Millennium Falcon in A New Hope, and that she leaves,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a little bit of jealousy there. I mean, that's about as much as I need. I don't need like to rehammer the points that my boyfriend likes somebody else, and this.
Right.
So I didn't even really get to dip into this idea of what Saw Gerrera was as a character, and I honestly feel like I'm not. Even if I don't pick back up the threads and watch those episodes, I don't think there's anything about it that's really going to inform what Forrest Whitaker is going to bring to the table. Because it's like,
No, I mean, I think just knowing, okay, this is where the character comes from, and like he's a guy, all this stuff that we learned in the Entertainment Weekly article. He's a guy who's maybe more at the extreme end of the rebellion and believes in these kind of more extreme tactics. Like, I think that's probably what's going to inform his character, just like who this person is and where he came from. But yeah, the plots of those episodes and like what the character did in those episodes. Yeah, I don't think he's going to rely on those too much.
yeah. And also, like, another Episode 8 thing that we have not heard any of. And now this might be, by design, but I just can't imagine that they'd be able to hide this. Have we heard anything about Billy D. Williams showing up?
Nope. I think about it. This sounds like a joke. I actually do think about that a lot.
I do too. I mean, I think it's super...
like, because we did at one point, like, oh, maybe he'll show up in, like, I think very early on there might have been rumors that there was a scene in like a bar or a casino or something, or they have to go to Lando for advice about something, and he's like, "Yeah, what could I do for you?" But that was such like a tenuous thing,
right?
And I honestly, that was probably more wishing than anything else. Yeah, no, I haven't heard anything about Billy D. Williams.
Yeah, I mean, I need something more if they're gonna do it, which I really hope they are, because I mean he's like the original, I mean it's like kind of, it just doesn't make sense not to do it. Even like, okay, yeah, he isn't gonna go out and hit the gym for 3 hours a day or whatever. He's an older gentleman. It's like, work with it,
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think it's really important. I don't know why I think it's super important, except that he was super important in the last two movies. It's like, and it just seems weird that he would just disappear from this story. I mean, we could go on forever about this, because we were never particularly happy with his portrayal in a lot of the EU books as time went on either. It's like, and he also never, he was in Scoundrels, but with Han, and he was in he had a big part in, he never had like everyone else had a very focused book in the EU as time went on, and he never really did.
Yeah, there never really was a Lando book. I mean, aside from those really early books, that trilogy from the, I guess it was early 80s.
Yeah, the L. Neil Smith ones that all came out way before even, when Star Wars is still a going concern the first time.
Yeah. But beyond that, yeah, I guess they really only brought him back. He was in the Black Fleet Crisis trilogy.
Yeah, I never finished that.
But and honestly, I guess it depends on what you like and what you want out of Star Wars as to whether you enjoy his storyline in the Black Fleet Crisis trilogy. I'll say it is. I found it to be. It's been a while since I've read him, but from what I remember, I recall his section of the Black Fleet Crisis trilogy, his storyline, to be somewhat reminiscent of those early books, where it's kind of like space mystery, kind of not quite psychedelic, but certainly not what a lot of people want or expect out of Star Wars, in terms of like crazy aliens and crazy alien technology and mystical harps and things like that. So the Black Fleet Crisis trilogy, like there was a point in time where like I only would read the Lando parts, because the rest of it didn't
Yeah,
care for. I mean, when they first came out, I read all of it and I loved all of it. But then after a while, I was like, I'll read the Lando bits. But it's been years since I've read any of them. But beyond that, I don't. He never played like a big role, and part of that may be that he was first created as like, well, if we kill off Han Solo, we should have a guy to like kind of take his place, and then they didn't kill off Han Solo, and so he was like, oh, we'll sprinkle him in for as a seasoning, but he's not the main course that people really care about, which I think is unfortunate because I think he could have been developed more into like a really good, well-rounded character in the EU. No one ever really took that on.
There also is another possibility,
which is
that they're biding their time before they make an official offer to have us executive produce the Lando Calrissian mysteries.
I mean, I feel like around the time they announced the young Lando movie, there was talk of like, they should make a young
Han movie, right?
Yeah, the young Han Solo movie. They should make a young Lando movie, or at least put. I think maybe even someone said like Michael B. Jordan, like they should make him the young Lando and put him in the Han Solo movie. Which I mean would be great, but like, give Lando his own movie.
I was thinking about that. I think Michael B. Jordan could play Lando. I mean, he kind of, maybe. I don't know.
I
want to see. I'd want to
his
see
his facial structure is different than Billy.
Yeah, but I mean, Alden Ehrenreich isn't really like super close, and I'm just like, once you kind of put that relaxer and kind of just get his hair just right.
Give him a slightly thinner mustache or not. He could probably pull it off.
Yeah. And we all know it's 90% acting anyway. If you can convince him, that's what Ehrenreich has
right
on his shoulders. That's kind of
he's got like the charisma for it, and then he can do a credible job of like making you realize, the facial structure, who cares?
A Lando movie, but See,
or there's anything like more Lando books, more Lando something.
Well, maybe
the comic book we got was okay.
Yeah, I liked it. I stand behind it. I think it was good. Except for Lobot's implant talk. It's like, but it was good. But I get nervous that they're waiting.
Mm-hmm.
That they're gonna wait, and then scheduling happens, and then things go, and then all of a sudden it gets dumped, and then I find out 2 years down the line, oh well, we were gonna have Billy D, but there was a scheduling issue, and I'm like, oh come on, scheduling.
Yeah. Well, so this brings another thing I've been thinking about that I wanted to get your thoughts on, which is so Alden Ehrenreich, since we were just talking about him, the news came out, I guess, yesterday that he had signed a 3-picture deal with Disney Lucasfilm. And initially people were like, oh, well, maybe he's in Rogue One, but Gareth Edwards says he is not in Rogue One.
And
so
neither is Hayden Christensen.
Right. I don't know. That's weird. I don't know why Hayden Christensen would be in
exactly. That's I was kind of like, that's like the big non-story of the week.
Yeah.
Other than the fact that he had been seen training in England or something.
Yeah. And I guess a while ago they had talked to him about like whether he would do a Star Wars movie again. And he was like, yeah, maybe.
I think Hayden's kind of in a different place with his acting. I mean, with his in his career right now, he's not. Yeah. It's not even he's got a kid now, and I don't think he's bitter about it, but I think he'd just been, his career didn't rocket off into a leading man situation. Even though people, have strong opinions about him, I honestly think for what he was given, he did pretty well. And I've seen him in some other things, and like Jumper, which was kind of like a weird, I think it's a comic book made into a sci-fi film. And then he did some weird kind of low budget, like sci-fi movie, which I forget what's that called, Avenue something. And it was pretty good. So I don't know, I don't understand the like the people call him Mannequin Skywalker.
Right.
Anyway, sorry.
Yeah.
I was jumping all over
so speculation now has come down on one of two possibilities. People are speculating that either there will be a young Han Solo trilogy, or at least they want to leave the door open for a young Han Solo trilogy, or a youngish Han Solo, because by the time they would get to the third one, he would be probably the same age or maybe even older than Harrison Ford was in A New Hope. But or
yeah, he's 26.
Yeah. Or that he'll show up in different standalone movies. This is kind of like, oh, hey, here's that guy. Why do we keep seeing that guy in all of these different planets? Or, there's a character I'm trying to reach for, there's a name for that and I can't think of it. But,
oh yeah.
But, just have him kind of show up in different standalone movies, not in Rogue One, but in whatever they do next. Just, this guy is here to give 2 lines, and then he's out the door. He's got something else going on.
Yeah, I mean, I had.
Do you have a preference for those, or what do you think about this idea?
I would prefer not. I'd prefer not to be watching some episode. I mean, sitting in the theater watching Rogue One and be into the story, and then all of a sudden have him stacking crates.
Right
next to them. Well,
right.
I mean,
it would be super distracting.
The timeline would be super weird too, considering that they're going to be butting right up against, maybe a week before A New Hope. So you would take a 26-year-old and try to pass him off as a 35-year-old, and who's an iconic face that we just said goodbye to a year ago.
Yeah,
I think it's they kind of have to. I think they have to put some distance between this. We have to put, a Rogue One, which is kind of a celebration of the past way of doing things,
but without falling into that trap you were just talking about.
Yeah,
all right, not everything has to be connected. Not everyone has to be related to each other, right? It's connected to the past, but aside from Vader, I guess this is a whole new group and Mon Mothma and maybe,
which means very little to most people, because they have to put her in the costume for people to even realize who that is.
Right. Right. But aside from those people, it's a completely new cast of characters, and so even as they're recalling the past, it's not like they're saying, oh well, there's a Skywalker cousin who stole it, or Biggs Darklighter was the one who stole the planet. They're not doing that with Rogue One, which I agree with you. I think that's probably the smart way to play it.
Yeah, and I mean, this whole thing that they're planning this trilogy with Alden Ehrenreich or whatever, it's I think it really would come. I think at the end of the day, it's come down to it's an investment that if they gotta, I don't know how much a young guy gets paid. I remember I was listening to, of all things, Howard Stern, and they had now I'm just blanking his name. Adam Driver was on. Adam Driver's real, unassuming. He's I don't think he watches his own performances. I mean, he's really he's like an old school type of actor where it's I can't even watch myself kind of thing. So he's not really a great part of of that kind of self-promotion machine that some of the other actors are really good at. And he kind of didn't deny that it's Howard Stern kind of pushed him on, because he always talks about money. You probably didn't get paid anything to be in this movie, did you? And he kind of went like that kind of thing. Yeah, where it was kind of because you can say, okay, you've been in all these indie films, you're on a well-liked HBO show, but you're not Brad Pitt, so we can give you $300,000, which if I'd be $300,000 to be in a movie, would be a lot of money, but in the grand scheme of things. And with a young guy like Alden Ehrenreich, it's what if they say well, we give you $2 million, and then if we make these movies, it's we can renegotiate. And
somehow, or not somehow, because I guess it wouldn't be that surprising, but if the movie does better than they ever expected to, they've already kind of got him locked in for future without having to renegotiate, to do additional movies. And my thing is I just wonder, assuming it is leaving open the possibility of this trilogy, what I'd be afraid of is they do one, it's crazy popular, they do the second one, and people are okay, I think we're good. But they've already committed to making this third one, and by the time the third one comes out, you're yeah, we're done.
Exactly.
Enough Han Solo movies. That would kind of be my fear with that.
Well, I mean, I think that is a totally valid observation, because I mean, look at the way movies are right now, that we'll take everything is because Star Wars caused this, is that everything is thought of in trilogies now. Yeah. But then they're well, we've been doing trilogies for 30, 40 years. What do we do now? Well, let's split the third part into 2 parts, which
right?
Narratively it's like a mess. Becomes a mess. You end up with what's going on with I don't know what the actual series is called, but the one with Shailene Woodley. The Divergent thing. So the third Divergent, which actually I guess there's 3 books, and so the third book is split into 2, and then what happened is the first half of the third book did terrible.
Yeah,
and, like, I don't even think it made back its what they call the negative or whatever.
Yeah.
Which I don't even think they use negatives anymore. So they've actually taken the kind of controversial way of, like, they're actually going to debut the 4th one on TV.
Yeah,
As a backdoor pilot for a TV series. And it's like, now they're talking about the idea that, like, you know, is this kind of thing going to, you know, I haven't kept up. I saw the first 2, can't tell you anything about them. But I mean, there's some big names. I mean, Shailene Woodley has become at least a big name in that realm of things. And then Miles Teller is in that, and I forget who else. I think there's, in my brain, they all just kind of like melded. I just finally finished the Hunger Games movies, and I'm just like, and I'm like, I always start it, and I have to say to my wife, like, where did we leave off with this? Because I don't know what's going on. And it's the funny thing too, because if it had been like 30 years ago, I probably would have been way more into these movies. But it's like my patience is waning. But like you said, I would never want a Star Wars series to become like tedious.
Right.
Where it's like it feels obligatory. Where
I
mean, even Marvel, as much as I've kind of my enthusiasm has waned a little bit in the sense that I don't go and see them in the theater. I honestly have no idea when, you know, the next Avengers is coming out. But you know, when they do come out, I watch them, and, you know, I'll have interest in that. I would just never want Star Wars movies to become like an obligation. Like, well, let's see what they did. You know, and that it is totally, you could, you know, I don't think that they, like they said they haven't announced that they're doing 3 movies, but yes, the rumor is that he's at least signed on for 3 movies. But they can completely just pay a guy out for a contract. They don't have to make the movies.
Right. And this could just be them leaving the door open and kind of covering themselves ahead of time in case they later decide to make 3 movies. No, go ahead.
No, that's all right.
All right. Well, I was going to move on, so if you have something to...
No, I forget what I was going to say.
Okay. Now. Well, yeah, I mean, you raised another interesting point, which is, you know, what's his name, the head of Disney now?
Bob Iger.
Bob Iger, right. So basically, they're going to keep making Star Wars movies until people stop going to see them. I assume at some point they will be announcing future movies, right? The Force Awakens doing well, Rogue One will probably do well. You know, they're at least locked in through Episode 9. They have these 2 standalone films. I can't imagine that they're just going to make these 5 movies and that's it. You know, in part because you need so much lead time to make these movies and to put them in production and everything that by the time they kind of register the fact that, like, maybe our audiences are declining, there'll probably already be 1 or 2 other movies in production by that point that will still come out after that point. But, you know, when do you think we might hear an announcement about some other future standalone film? Because I don't know what your estimate would be. I would say it probably takes them 3 years, maybe 4 from, you know, the movie being greenlit to actually coming out in the theater, right? So that's writing the script, that's pre-production, shooting, post-production, right? You need all of this lead time to, you know, before the movie hits the theaters. Right now, Star Wars only has movies slated through 2019, so 2020 is open. And so if it's going to take them 3 to 4 years to make a movie, I would imagine that they're going to announce one. They would announce one relatively soon if they're going to put one out in 2020. And so maybe get excited. We might be getting an announcement of a new movie at some point. But then the flip side of that is, at the same time, how do they make that announcement and generate buzz and excitement of like, oh, they're doing a new movie, considering that they still have 4 movies that haven't come out yet that we know they're making, and they don't want to step on promotion. They don't want to crowd out the excitement about those movies. So, I mean, do you think we're going to get, I mean, do you think that the young Han Solo movie is like the last one that for certain they know they're going to make, and then maybe they're just going to wait and see how that one does and go from there? Or do you think, another announcement about future Star Wars movies is around the corner?
I don't think it's around the corner. I definitely think that they are. I believe that there's probably way more movies in development than you would ever think. But development might mean anything from, somebody comes in and says, "Oh, my Rogue One drawings are done," and then somebody says, "Hey, why don't we need somebody to draw like a new kind of Star Destroyer," and it's like, and they're like, okay, and then they do it for a week because they're done with their thing, and then they just fold it away as ideas for episode 11, or episode 10 or whatever, or for draw like a proto Millennium Falcon. It's like that kind of idea. It's like, I think that they're not at the point where they're like interviewing directors or having script submit, but I think that they're saying like,
they're probably kicking around ideas.
Well, they're probably saying to guys like Pablo Hidalgo or Leland Chi or Kiri Hart. It's like, I don't really know how the hierarchy works. I mean, that's the one thing about Celebration.
I think it sounds like Kiri Hart is maybe in charge of the story group.
Yeah, I mean, obviously she's a creative person, but is she a writer?
I don't think the story group
is she a manager? I mean,
I don't know. It doesn't sound to me like the story group members themselves do a lot of writing, with the exception of maybe Kinberg, and then Pablo Hidalgo writes some of like the reference books that come out.
Right, and when I say,
but I don't think any of those people themselves actually write scripts.
And my point is the fact that they, at this level they wouldn't be scripting, and that they would say, hey, pitch us an episode. Because I'm sure at this point they know the story, vaguely how the saga is going to, this version of the saga is going to end. So it's like, well, pitch us an episode 10. And then, but you can't, it's like, you can't say a dang thing about it. And then they just put it in a box with a bunch of ideas. I mean, I don't think they have anything in the pipe, but I think they're probably conceptually working. They're creating, because I mean, if they assemble this huge team to work on this, it's, maybe these ideas will be spun off. Tenses. Spun off into a television idea, or another animated series, or another ride for Disney in China, Shanghai Disney or something, something special for. I just think that it's more of an amorphous idea of like, let's just not let all these ideas, because they know that, having a deficit of ideas is always going to be the sure sign your property is in trouble. It's like, we've run out of ideas. So I think they're like, anything that doesn't get reused gets tagged and put in the box for like, which the sad thing about that is it makes you think that like, well, maybe these, anything subsequently will be considered more piecemeal and kind of like, it's almost like the idea of, I'd like to go back and read. I have a couple of these books were written by Steve Sansweet about the original Kenner action figures, and by about 1984, people had pretty much were done with Star Wars toys. It was done. They were being closed out, so they were like, well, what do we do? So they created this like pitch, which was like, Tarkin escaped the destruction of the Death Star, and he teamed up with almost like a Snoke type character, and he has, he's fighting the Rebels or the New Alliance or whatever. And I went and looked; they had some prototypes, and they were literally like, they took the parts of pre-existing figures and like put the arm of this guy on the thing, and then he cut the head off of this and glued it on upside down. And that's what I'm kind of worried, if they do kind of have this big box of ideas, that they will have. These next movies will be like, oh, here's all the parts that we didn't use for episode 9. This we had this whole thing about Shmi Skywalker's brother showing up or something, that kind of the idea, which, I mean, I know that they, at least from what they've been telling us, these movies are kind of moving away from the Skywalker saga, Luke Skywalker being like the Skywalker family being the nexus of Star Wars, which is probably, because they don't want to have to tie it into like a convoluted story where people go, I have to watch 9 movies to understand where I'm going with this. Yeah, it's interesting. It's like, I'm kind of interested in how long we'll stay interested, Right. Me being interested in Star Wars is not a foregone conclusion all the time. It's not like one of those things where, they're too big to fail. There is a total thing where it could change so much, or it could become so bereft of originality or compelling stories that, you could get this fact where it's like, oh, Star Wars 15's coming out.
Yeah.
And it's like, maybe I'll see it if it shows up on Netflix or something. It's like, you can totally, it would probably behoove them to really just do a bang up job on this trilogy, which, I mean, so far they've done great, and do a bang up job on these Star Wars stories, and ruminate in that for a while, kind of just the same way that, that the original trilogy that they kind of marketed for 20 years after that movie came out, they were still able to kind of eat lunch on that original trilogy in a way that sadly the prequels did not inspire. It's not like, I think the only thing that really, the lasting thing of that part of the franchise is really a situation where they did Star Tours, and they changed it a little bit with some Naboo stuff, and it's like, it wasn't like a thing where like people were like, after that was done, the Clone Wars, I guess you could say the Clone Wars were an extension of that, but the Clone Wars was, as much as people would say it was an artistic success, it wasn't a rating success. But that's kind of where I'm at with it. It's like, go cautiously with these ideas.
No, I mean, I tend to agree with you. I just wonder, 2020's open, assuming they decide to release a movie, Christmas 2020. I mean, I think without, I think the latest they would be able to announce, or the latest they would be able to announce that would be maybe Celebration 2018. But even then,
and that's going to be an off.
That would require them to have basically kept the entire script writing process a secret, because then that only leaves 18 months until the movie would come out, and that's basically all of shooting and post production. So maybe then beginning of 2018, the end of 2017, but then how do you do that without, again, stepping on the promotion of whatever movie is about to come out that they already have? So, I mean, I wonder if they're kind of like caught in this, it's a trap, if they've kind of, if they've cornered themselves a little bit here in terms of marketing and promotion, of like making sure that they give each of these movies its due, but at the same time they have to generate excitement for future movies,
Yeah. And one of the things that
at a certain point, they're going to start lapping themselves.
Yeah, and the one thing I meant to mention that I forgot to say when I started pontificating was, that they're going to time this. They have to time it in a way to get the maximum amount of impact on their stocks. They have to. You know what I mean? Right. It's like right now they're probably flying high. It's like Disney shares. It's it's at its highest or what? I don't know actually.
Yeah.
But my point is that you would wait for it to start to sag when you do. Well, actually, they're kind of actually in a weird. Actually, they're kind of down, but over the last year, which is kind of strange. Oh, that's anyway. You would want to time it in the sense that we're a good investment. We've got another. Wow, they've been downgraded. That's weird.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've been reading a lot of this stuff, so now I'm like, now I think I'm Mr. Moneyman. But my point is that they would, Bob Iger, who won't be around because he's set to retire in less than 2 years. He won't be around to announce them. So maybe it would be time to a new CEO, you know, which rumor is it's going to be either, you know, maybe Kathleen Kennedy might actually be stepping up to oversee all of Disney. I don't know if I've ever heard any rumor about Kevin Feige doing that, but I have heard more rumors about Kathleen Kennedy maybe taking on the mantle. And then, you know, maybe it kind of works up the thing, and then Akiri Hart comes and runs Lucasfilm. I mean, this is all speculation at this time, but I think you time these kind of announcements when you're going to get as much fan reaction and you're going to get as much Wall Street reaction, because they need to, you know, they need to have, they need to increase their capital or pay for these things. So, I mean, I know it's a little kind of boring to have to think about it in that sense, but that's really kind of how these things work when you're dealing with, you know, billions and billions of dollars of investment. I guess, and you don't want to, like I say, you don't want to poach the excitement about what you have. So I guess a lot of it is kind of how, you know, everybody says episode 8's going to be great.
Right. But as you point out, like, investors need to know, like, so are you going to keep making more money in the future? And by making more money, we mean making more Star Wars, which is what makes you more money. Are
you going to make them more cheaply? You know, that kind of thing. It's like, who knows what the idea, you know, there's so much talk, you know, you talk about how much, like, you know, is a movie a success if it makes, you know, $150 million? Well, it's like, well, did it cost 500 million? You know, did it cost? Did it Force Awakens? Did
it make more than it cost?
Yeah, I mean,
how much more than it cost?
The truth is, The Force Awakens probably cost about $500 million to make.
Yeah,
and then it made, you know, $1.5 billion. So yes, it's a success. But then, of course, you know, Hollywood accounting, which we've all heard rumors of how that is. But yeah, it's hard. It's going to be, if they've kind of milked the property for everything. It's like, well, we're still investing. You know, we still have to invest $500 million to make an episode 10. Then maybe if, like, you know, they'll be less apt to do it if they can. It's like, well, it's a harder sell to investors to say, like, all right, we're gonna, instead of just kind of reusing the property we have and, like, making another standalone film or whatever. It's interesting. Or, you know, like I said, every time they make another movie, it's like they're always potentially going to, this will be the one that ruins Star Wars. You're going to lose a certain kind of, like, oh, things were going great until we made, you know, the Han Solo movie and everybody hated it, and now people are more skeptical when they go back to the theater, you know, for episode 9, which I think is the is that how it goes? It's going to go Rogue One, Episode 8, Han Solo, then Episode 9?
Yeah. Yes.
And
then who knows what lies beyond.
Exactly. This Josh Trank movie has, you know, this Josh Trank movie that never happened.
Right.
Well, he was not the Han Solo.
No, he was the Boba Fett.
Right. Which
movie. But they announced and then pulled back.
Did they actually announce Boba Fett, like, as a movie?
Because I don't know. I think they said they were going to make 3 standalone movies, and everyone kind of figured out that the third one was going to be Boba Fett. I don't know that they officially announced it, but enough people reported it on it that, like, that's probably what their intention was. And then that's not happening now.
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to hear. Yeah, even if they are developing that in some way, we're not going to hear anything about that until Rogue One comes out. Because I bet you they are so not sure how people are going to react to the way they're kind of mixing it up. You know, and it might just be, like, healthy skepticism about, you know, changing the mix or whatever. And like, oh, no Crawl, no John Williams, no, you know, well, now they tried to fix this by saying, like, well, no familiar faces. And it's like, well, they're bringing Darth Vader in. That's their familiar face.
Right. Well, so let's get back to movies that are coming out.
Okay.
That we know of. Episode 8. I mean, this is something that a lot of people were speculating about weeks before Celebration, but it's kind of, I think it's come up anew. But there's a speculation, there's fear, mild panic, perhaps, that Luke Skywalker may die in Episode 8. Which I know you are not happy about. You would not be happy about that. But I mean, I think the question is, Harrison Ford wanted them to kill off Han Solo in the original trilogy because he wanted the characters' different journeys to mean something, right? He wanted their fight against the Empire to mean something, and he wanted it to have real stakes. So the interesting question from my perspective is, now that Han Solo has died in episode 7, is that enough? Or do more of these older characters from the original trilogy, do these heroes of the rebellion kind of need to die in order for Rey's journey and Finn's journey and, the fight against the First Order and maybe Kylo Ren's journey, for those to mean something in the same way that, we talk about like a character's death meaning something for other characters, right? Like, for the stakes involved, does Luke or Leia or someone else, from the original trilogy, do they need to die to make that work? You would probably say no, but
I mean, that's the thing. It's like, the funny thing is, I just read something last night that said that there was a whole version of the Force Awakens script where Han survived, and that it was not a foregone conclusion. Harrison Ford did not come into the situation saying, I'll do it if you kill me off. And I find that surprising, because I always thought, the minute I heard Harrison Ford had signed on for episode 7, I knew for a fact, it's like, oh wow, we're going to see Han Solo die in this movie. I know it, because it's like, if you know the lore, that's the thing. But a lot of this rumor, the frenzy about Luke Skywalker dying said something where Mark Hamill said something on Twitter, basically that he was looking for work, jokingly. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, people don't realize that, actors are chronically unemployed. And, it's that idea when you wrap, until he has to do some reshoots or and we don't even know if he's going to be in reshoots, or he has to do some like dubbing, which I assume is all contractual anyway. So that money has already been paid. Yeah, he's out looking for work. He's got The Killing Joke coming out, but it's another voice role. So yeah, he's an actor who's actually had his profile has been raised for the first time in 32 years. It's like, people are excited about him, and he's probably wanting to like turn that into some work. And I think his turn of phrase made send people in this frenzy that he was like, well, I'm dead, so who's hiring? And I mean, that's not to say that narratively that Luke Skywalker can't die or shouldn't die for me to enjoy it. I honestly have kind of felt that, yes, he is going to die, but not in episode 8.
Yeah,
it's the kind of, he's gonna, and that only comes from my feeling of how I understand how they are telling these stories now, and that is to say that they are not, they're not against going back and picking in some old ideas. And if you ever go to like the annotated screenplays for the original trilogy, have you ever read that book?
I believe so. It's been a while though. Yeah,
it's out of print right now. Maybe people can find it in a used bookstore, but it's great because it kind of goes through them all. Originally, Jedi was supposed to be a vastly different type of film initially than what it became, and a lot of it had to do with this kind of idea of, which I've called the Force Ghost, the idea that, there's this whole thing in Empire where Ben goes, "Oh, I can't help you if you go alone," Well, in the version of Jedi, when he's confronted by Emperor confronts him and he's being beaten, that's when all of a sudden Yoda and Obi-Wan kind of emerge in this spectral place that they've been to help Luke fight. And I believe it's an interesting idea. But it didn't work with what they were trying to sell. But I honestly feel that will be revisited, that idea will be revisited, and it might possibly be either, maybe it will be in episode 8, where he is, he's leaves his corporeal body or whatever and comes back in 9.
Yeah.
In the sense that, but the truth of that is, it doesn't mean Luke would be, Mark Hamill would be looking for work, because he'd be coming back and mo-capped or putting on a shiny suit or whatever they're going to do, kind of thing. So it doesn't really mean the character is going to die off the screen. But yes, he may physically die in episode 8. But I believe that even, if he does, he would definitely return as this ghost thing. Because I feel that that's one of the things that either they're never going to explain it properly and leave it up to interpretation, or they're going to kind of want to come back and, not that George Lucas, I would say at the very best he kind of botched it, in the sense that he thought we were going to get some explanation, like how could Obi-Wan Kenobi just disappear, and then they couldn't even explain it properly in Revenge of the Sith. It was all just kind of like, oh, we have more training, how to commune with the Force and all this stuff, and it's like, huh? What is? Oh, is that you're not? They couldn't even get Liam Neeson to come and do the voice, which I don't know if it was a scheduling thing or Lucas, which they ended up doing again in on the animated, which irks me. It's like, so he shows up on the animated, but they don't want to put him in the live action.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's I'm like, obviously I'm in heavy speculation mode. It's just everything I'm seeing is like, well, we're gonna. I've heard, and again, spoiler alert, that Carrie Fisher's part in this movie isn't very large.
Yeah. That
she spends most of the movie kind of unconscious. That's the rumor.
Yeah.
But I don't know where I heard that rumor, and so you got to take it with a grain of salt and whatnot. It's just, I think it's like, what do they call it, the long goodbye or whatever. It's just kind of like, we've already, Peter Mayhew is not going to be in this because we haven't heard anything about him being in it. So we know. I
think I just saw on IMDb that he is listed at least.
Yeah, but anybody can.
But they already had a couple they had 2 or 3 other actors playing Chewbacca along with it.
Right, and they can
episode 7,
and they can already. And I think anybody with a pro IMDb account can edit stuff. So sometimes people get enthusiastic at 2 o'clock in the morning and think, hey, he's not listed, of course he's in it, and they just put it in there and nobody bothers to change it because they don't want to speculate one way or the other. That's my feeling. It's just like, it's just going to be a slow changeover, which is kind of strange because by the end it's like we're going to have all, it'll be all the new characters, and then the movie will be over, and then like, oh,
yeah.
Does that mean that there's this rumored next trilogy? Will they bring back Boyega? Will they bring back Daisy Ridley, or will they move in some completely different direction? Will they do like another prequel and do like a Knights of the Old Republic style, way before the first Jedi or something like that?
Yeah, the way I was thinking of it, Kylo Ren killed Han Solo as part of his journey to the dark side. His fight against the lightness he felt inside him. It made him. It helped make him more evil, or whatever. However you want to describe it. So, what's it if that's what it took for that to happen? What's it going to take for him to come back from that? Assuming he does, but. If that's how they decide to write his character arc, where that he eventually comes back to the light side, what is it going to take for that to happen? Is it going to take someone else dying at the hands of Snoke or whatever? In episode 6, Return of the Jedi, Luke doesn't die, but it still takes the Emperor almost killing Luke essentially for Anakin Skywalker to turn back to the light side, and so. Does it have to be a similar kind of momentous event? And the only reason I would think that it might, I guess it could be John Boyega. I really highly doubt they would kill off Daisy Ridley's character.
No.
But, maybe it could be Finn, I guess. I think that would have more of an impact than if they killed off Poe Dameron. I think, at least at this point, who knows, in episode 8, they may develop his character more, and it to the point where it may have as big of an impact. But, I I don't think they want to kill off the younger characters just in case they make another trilogy after that, and they want to keep their options open for who comes back. Which is why I was thinking that, well, then it would probably be Luke or Leia at this point. But yeah, I guess there's still so much up in the air. We can kind of guess at what some of these character arcs are going to be, and given what we know of Star Wars and how it's structured and the reference points that it uses, we can probably come up with pretty good guesses for how some of these character arcs are going to go. But it's like, all right, so then now that they've opened that door, does it mean we're going to see even more character deaths along the way? And it's, I don't know. You express your, I'm a little more open to it, I guess, than you are, but I think it has to make sense. And they, if they start doing it just because, like, well, this guy didn't agree to do another movie, so we kind of have to kill him off instead. Like, I think if that becomes sort of the reason why they do it, or if it seems like it's just done sort of offhandedly, or kind of, like, well, we killed him and yeah, we'll have like a funeral scene for him, but then everyone moves on and is fine with it, and it's never referenced again. That's when it would become a little tougher for me to see.
Yeah, I mean,
you did this in a respectful way to the character.
Yeah, well, I mean, the point is, I just don't think that they would want to. I mean, they did. There was a big death in the Force Awakens, and just to do another big death in the next one.
Yeah,
it just seems like they'd be hammering it, even if it solves a problem or something. It's like, oh, how do we get rid of this X character? And it's like, I mean, and also and again, I'm sorry, I feel I'm being very spoilery, but this is all very rumor mill stuff. Mm-hmm. So you got to take it with a grain of salt. I mean, Carrie Fisher kind of had a Freudian slip at Celebration where she mentioned something about a funeral. Right. But I've already heard rumor that is Han's funeral, because now we're getting that no gap thing where we're just going right into it. So it's like, are you going to have starts with a funeral and a person dies at the end? It's like, how morose are these movies going to get? I know that Boyega has said that it's going to be a darker movie, but I don't think he was like, it's dark. I just think it's going to be darker. It's more, it's more in depth. It's more emotional. It's going to be kind of to steal a phrase from what they said about Rogue One. It might be people talking in cockpits or something like that. A little bit more. And I'm definitely looking forward to that, because it's like, every time I watch The Force Awakens, it's like, man, this movie goes by fast. Yeah. And it's like, before you blink, they're like, they're on Starkiller Base having a showdown. It's like, and it's, it's like, it's not shorter than any of the Star Wars movies. It just, the pacing of it is just crazy fast. Mm-hmm. And I think, if they're kind of trying to do like this ring theory of this not resuscitation, but kind of a meditation on kind of like cyclical idea that, yes, this, 8's going to be kind of our empire, which I know Lucas tried to have darkness with the idea of, of Anakin's jealousy and his covetousness of Padme and her rejection, and then his assassinating or killing people and the death of his. It was trying to make it dark, although it ended up, because of poor choices, it ended up becoming almost comedic. But that's kind of where they go with these things, and then they kind of pull it out, and they kind of pull it and go for a light. Hopefully they maybe have come up with a better idea than kind of the way they did Jedi, and keeping it super light. Having a really dark and part of the end, but they have to have this incredible levity in Jedi, which is that kind. I think, which is maybe what Marquand and Lucas were going for. It's like the idea, like, well, we're dealing with a lot of death and we're dealing with a lot of revelations. Like, maybe having teddy bear picnic or whatever is what just the levity we need to keep the people from walking out of that theater in May going, God, what a depressing movie. It's like, because actually at the end of the thing, if you think about Jedi, it's like, if you think about the original cut of Jedi, it's all very like up in the air. I mean, like later on, he fixed it by having, Wisa free and all that stuff, and all the galaxy in revolt against the Empire. But if you think about it, it's like the original Return of the Jedi literally ends with him seeing ghosts that only he can see, and kind of being like him realize. In some ways, you look at the way he looks at it without the context, you think like, yeah, I've got a lot of work ahead of me. And like, I'm not entirely sure how this is going to go, because it's like, okay, I was able to turn my father, but it's like I have no way to know where to go from here.
Yeah.
Like we blew up the Death Star, but did we actually defeat the Empire?
Right.
I think it was less explicit in the original cut of Jedi whether the Empire was being defeated. And the funny thing is that as time has gone on, they've actually adopted that idea. Disney kind of readopted that idea, that instead of it being like, the EU, where the remnant, as they called the Empire, was just this kind of ineffectual group of squabbling moths, as they would say, fighting over former Imperial territory. They actually had to have another huge battle or something at the Battle of Jakku. I mean, there was a whole nother, which I think is going to be the third aftermath or whatever, right? Isn't it?
Yeah.
Anyway, where do we go now?
All right, yeah, we can move on. It just,
I'm sorry.
Again, since you were talking about future films, I thought that was something worth discussing. But we have more than movies coming out. Video games is also active. We started off talking about stuff left over from Celebration, and so there's a video games panel, or I guess it was. Yeah, there were a couple. There was like a video games panel, but then there was also just a generic storytelling panel that had some of the video game folks in there. So Amy Hennig was at a couple panels and talked about the game that she is spearheading. She said it's still a very long way out. 2018 is when we can expect it. Doug Chang is. I think we knew he was working on it, but she called him essentially the art director for that movie. They're creating new characters, new locations, new technologies, so they're working very closely with the story group, and that there were a few images that had been released. I guess there was that, I don't even know if you'd call it a trailer or a teaser, but there's a video that showed up on YouTube a couple weeks or maybe a couple months back about all the video games and all the things that they were doing, and there are just a few still images from the game, or maybe they were even just concept art from the game. And she said that those images have a lot of clues in them as to what is going on. So I mean, but it also sounded like it was going to be very similar to the last game series she worked on. And one thing I thought was interesting is we're talking about Star Wars is essentially as an ensemble story, that even though you have like Luke Skywalker, they still spend time with Han Solo and develop that character, and they develop Leia's character. And, even with The Force Awakens now, you have Rey, but you also have Finn and Poe, and you have Kylo, this idea that, so for the video game, even though you're playing as one character, perhaps, like it's not just about that one character, which I thought was kind of interesting. So, I mean, did you see any of that or read anything about it?
I watched the actual conversation with the video game people. I guess I didn't. I guess I didn't see the one that she did with the storytelling. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I did pick up the idea. She's famous for people who aren't video games players. She's famous for this series, the first 3 installments of the Uncharted series, which is kind of it's almost the shortest way. It's a contemporary take on the idea of an Indiana Jones character. He's kind of he kind of looks like the actor Nathan Fillion a little bit, the actor, and it's about this guy who supposedly there's this whole mythology which doesn't really add up. He's like that he might be, I forget what, if it's like he's a descendant of Sir Francis Drake, or he takes the name Drake. I forget. It's just they're actually very interesting games. As far as story wise, the same problem we run into a lot of video games is that the gameplay can be a little tiresome with some of the action. I would call the type of gameplay what the terminology what people use is kind of on the rails, meaning you you kind of go in a very linear fashion about problem solving, whether it's I've got to climb this I have to climb up this train car that's hanging over a cliff or something. It's like you don't get to make a lot of decisions on how there's really only one way to solve problems. Kind of, so it's a very linear story. And she had said, like, when she had mentioned Uncharted and people have clapped, she goes, "Oh, good, then you guys will like this game." And then I'm like, I'm really hoping that this doesn't turn out to just be kind of an Uncharted-ish Star Wars game. But I mean, all we've seen is, like I said, it's a quick transition of a male figure passing through a doorway into a larger courtyard street scene area with an Imperial. Or would we think, was it Imperial or First Order? I forget the symbol.
It has the red, which is associated with the First Order.
Okay, so it is
more so, and I don't think they really use the red with the Empire that much. But I think the symbol in the middle might be closer to the Empire.
Okay, so yeah,
so
it might be an interesting kind of changeover about take somewhere operating in the. Of course, then again, the book Bloodlines had acted pretty much established the First Order was a relatively new creation in the last 5 years. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see what they do. I mean, I'm optimistic because, like I said, I've said this once and I've said things. I like Star Wars games. I've become much more picky. I'm not playing a lot. I'm not playing any of the mobile games or whatever. But I mean, I love a AAA, as they call them, when it's the expensive titles. I love a good AAA Star Wars game. And but yeah, 2000. That seems like, God, it's so long, so far away. I honestly wish there had been some announcement of something that was like, it's coming out in Christmas of 2017, or I wish we'd had some dates. But I mean, these kind of things are, the industry is in kind of in a different way about how I think they try to milk their current properties for as long as possible before they build new ones. But like I said, they kind of walked away, like at that panel, the one I watched about games, they talked a little bit about the Knights of the Old Republic, which is kind of an interesting thing they have because it's never been, quote, taken back to the rebooted canon. It's still the same canon that they've been using for years. And with these massively multiplayer games, it's it takes a few years to build up a following. So if they had said, "Well, we're going to reboot this part of the universe too," they might have lost any of inertia they'd been building for the couple years to get people to play it. So it's not a series that I play. I'm not a PC gamer, so unfortunately I can't speak to it. So I've only watched it on Twitch a little bit, and it doesn't really it's not something like, oh gosh, I wish they'd bring this to consoles, or maybe I should buy a cheap PC to play this on. It's not really my thing. Yeah.
But you have played Battlefront, so there was some Battlefront news that came out. They announced some different expansion packs for this first Battlefront. It looks like it sounds like they're going to go up through. They showed a trailer or a teaser for the Death Star expansion that's coming out. And that, I don't have the time or the equipment to play any of those games right now, but I mean, that's kind of the first Battlefront teaser trailer that I saw that I went, oh man, that looks really good. It's an effective teaser, I'll say. But then they also have a Scarif expansion coming based on Rogue One, where you can play as either Jyn Erso or Orson Krennic, Orson Krennic being the Ben Mendelsohn character. I should just start calling him Ben Bendelson and start doing it intentionally. And then there's going to be a new offline single player skirmish mode. So, I mean, what do you think of those developments? You've started posting on Twitter lately that, your interest has been piqued again in Battlefront and that you might pick it back up.
Well, I guess the easiest way to explain is I bit the bullet and I bought the season pass, which so that was the big thing about this game. It came out, it was a $60 game, and literally within 6 months they were like, hey, if you really want to play all the new stuff, you got to pay another $50. And I just, on principle, it just irked me so much that I kind of, in protest, refused to buy it. And I've, already they've released two packs, which was, the first one was called the Outer Rim, which is based in Jabba's palace and had some game modes in it, which I did get to play because they did a weekend, like, you can play this for a weekend for free. And then, of course, which really piqued my interest but hadn't sold me on it, was a Bespin thing, which I think it's just called Cloud City or whatever. It's like you can fly in a cloud car. There's a beautiful depiction of Cloud City that you can battle on. There's more, they call them hut contracts or something like that. It's like basically in-game goals. So I hadn't bought it, but yeah, I was intrigued by this, and I know that when Rogue One comes out in the early winter, that I'm going to be totally jonesing for something connected to that movie, much like when they released the expansion, the Battle of Jakku, for the game last Christmas, and which did come free with the game that you purchase. So yeah, I made the jump. And for listeners out there, this is, what's the date today? Because sometimes I know people, it's the 27th of July right now. This week until, I think, maybe till the end of the month, if you're if you're a person who plays this game already and is like me, you've been holding off. They did knock $15 off the season pass, and it's $34.99, and it's still a little pricey. It's as much as I would pay for a full game sometimes. But I was like, I'm gonna revisit this. Death Star thing looks really cool. I haven't been playing it as of late. Just been playing something else. But I'm really looking forward to kind of jumping in the next week or so and really kind of playing that Bespin thing, because I got to play it for like 5 minutes just to make sure I installed it right, and it looked really cool. I got in a cloud car and then summarily accidentally drove it right into a wall, but there's a learning curve with this old fart. But it just, my whole thing is that I had expectations of it being kind of a lot like another game that DICE had worked on. And then once you kind of remove that, it's like, it's very fun. You can jump in, you can play this skirmish mode or whatever. Now they've got it so you don't have to necessarily be online, because a lot of times people have issues with that. It's like, there is situations you can get in if you're not a person who plays a lot of video games. And even though I spend a lot of time playing them, I would never say that I was good at it, There's always that. The funny thing is, every time you get it, I've had this happen a few times where you have conversations about video games, and like in a place where they sell video games, like a Best Buy or a Microsoft store. And on 2 separate occasions, people have told me that they were like, out of nowhere, they just go, yeah, well, I'm ranked as one of the top 10 players for such and such game, and I'm just like,
yeah.
Really? That's how you spend your time? I mean, do you get sponsored or something like that? So I guess, it's never been a priority to be really great at games. It's for me to enjoy. It's not for me to show, I'm way better than my neighbor. So for me, it's like these skirmish mode. That's a really, even Boyega had kind of complained. John Boyega had famously, either EA or DICE had kind of said, hey, where's the narrative for this game? It's just, there's no narrative. But if you play the game, you realize it's like, Luke Skywalker can just appear out of nowhere on the battlefield in his Return of the Jedi fatigues. It's kind of more of an arcade-ish game. There is no narrative.
Right.
You're not building. It's essentially kind of like a sophisticated version of checkers. You're not. It's the thing I think that Amy Hennig is going to have a narrative, a story. And I don't know, like you said, it's like they have tried to put these things in the canon, so they're probably going to have a character that they'll throw in the canon, and maybe there'll be a 5 comic books mini-series for the guy, and a figure and whatnot, which I don't think Battlefront is that. It's not that kind of game. It's just a really... Right. If they could do it, they would probably... If they could have gotten away with doing this on an iPad, they probably would have,
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I wonder if that, they have that mobile game that's the dungeon crawler, but I do wonder if, having these kinds of games like Battlefront that are a little more involved, but, eventually the tablet technology is going to catch up that they can maybe, develop some of those games for tablets that, you wouldn't normally have thought would be. And so, yeah, I wonder if eventually, by the time they get to Battlefront 4 or whatever, it'll be, tab Battlefront 4 for your iPad Deluxe or,
Yeah, that is true. It's kind of like, I just say that because it's like, I find playing video games on an iPad a completely frustrating experience. Mm-hmm. It's like, I bought Knights of the Old Republic for like $10 for my iPad, and it's like, oh man, I really hate, you have to like drag your finger on the screen to move people around. It's like, I like to kind of sit in a chair and play. It's kind of a physically passive experience, and for some reason iPads, I feel like you got to balance the damn thing, and it's a whole different ball of wax.
Yeah. So in addition to Celebration, we also had Comic-Con. I guess I shouldn't say we had Comic-Con because I didn't go.
I didn't even watch.
Comic-Con happened in San Diego. And we got more news about stuff coming out. So the Hasbro panel was probably got the most buzz. Yeah, I mean, Star Wars didn't have a huge presence at Comic-Con because they just had Celebration, but they did have some stuff that made the rounds of the news buzz biz.
Yeah, I saw they had a kind of their booth was like kind of a mock-up of a Masasi temple on the floor, but they didn't have any panels or anything like. Well, I guess they had a Hasbro panel, didn't they? Yeah. Yeah.
So there was a specific Hasbro panel where the news was that they announced the next round of Black Series 6-inch figures, and they kind of showed off some of the sculpts and the concept art for them. There might have been a couple where they actually had the finalized figure there to show off. So, and we had talked about this previously about the fan vote, which I'll get to in a minute. But who would we want to see? And we realized that there were a lot of kind of really obvious characters who were missing, and so they filled those in a little bit. So there's going to be a Qui-Gon figure now, who is someone we mentioned. Hera from Rebels. There's going to be a Tusken Raider figure. There's going to be an Imperial Royal Guard figure, and the, I don't know what else you'd call it other than like body armor that the guard is wearing underneath the robe. That's based on the design from the Crimson Empire comics. And so people who know and have read and like those comics were excited about that. And then Lando, there's going to be the Lando from his Bespin outfit, the Empire Strikes Back Lando, but not the one at the end of Empire Strikes Back where he's wearing Han's clothing,
right?
Just the normal Bespin.
See, I had already assumed
gold cape.
I already assumed that they had that. That's why I didn't even suggest.
I think I did too. Maybe they didn't have a 6-inch figure, but they had a smaller one,
right? The 3.34, the
3 3/4.
3 3/4. I'm terrible with measurements, but yeah, it's. I mean, I know you're not a guy that wants to do, and my interests in that has kind of. It's like I keep saying to myself, no, you're not getting into this. It's like you've got better ways to spend your money, but it's like the Lando looks really good.
It does.
Tusken Raider looks. I mean, it's so hard to do a good. I always kind of default to the. I default to the stuff that's like the non-humans because I always feel like that's the I think the Harrison Ford, The Force Awakens. I think every sculpt I've seen looks terrible. And it's like there's nothing about that makes me want. And I've complained about the first Finn one, which was improved by like a new sculpt for the Finn 2187 or whatever figure that I actually did purchase. But that Tusken Raider looks great. You had said that they have shown, and they did it at Celebration, and then I think they showed it again at the Comic-Con. The Jyn Erso which is the first. Which, be honest, I'm not a huge fan of. I mean, everybody's like, "Oh,
It's okay.
It looks okay." I don't think it's particularly representative of how she looks. But
I think it's a little bit better than the Rey figure, but yeah, it's not quite right. Like the cheeks aren't quite right or something.
Yeah, I mean, I'll have to see it up close. I've just seen it, like people hold, Felicity Jones holding it up. So that's as much as I've seen of it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's interesting. So they had this. What do they call it?
The fan poll.
Fan poll. Did you vote in the fan? Did you vote?
Didn't. No, because in order to vote, you had to comment on someone's blog. Like there was a list of 10 or so blogs.
Oh.
That participating, and you had to leave a comment on those blogs. That's what it looked like when I read about it on the Star Wars.
I thought maybe my vote didn't count, and I just clicked on something and I made my vote.
But I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that. But Jaina Solo from the EU, the twin sister of Jason Solo, daughter of Han and Leia, but of course that's not canon anymore, won the fan poll. And there was some, I guess, mild controversy. I saw some people on Twitter claiming that someone else had set up bots to vote for Jaina Solo, and it jumped from third to first overnight. I don't particularly care either way. I don't know. I acknowledge that there are people out there who are defending the EU and want to make sure that Lucasfilm doesn't forget about it. And it's not quite political, but it's there are a lot of times they're doing this to make a statement. And I also recognize that there are people out there who genuinely love that character and, want a representation of that character. The whole thing just makes me so sleepy, honestly. It's why does this need to devolve into the, you're making a toy. It's fine if they don't do it. It's fine if they do it. This doesn't need it to go, they made a bot. Are you seriously going to count those fake votes? So now those fake votes count now? And I just let it go. Just fine. They made a Jaina Solo action figure. I can't imagine it's going to sell all that well. I'm sure a lot of people will see it and get really confused because they're like, wait, I thought they had a son named Ben. Who's this?
Oh, God. Yeah, people will be saying, see, I told you she was Han Solo's kid. And they'll be like, no, her name's Rey. No, right. I saw the figure.
Right. I think it's... if they actually end up making this figure, great. If not, I'm sure there will be an outcry, but honestly, like I said, I get kind of tired.
Yeah, I'm tired of
thinking about this.
I'm not tired.
Tired in the sense that I need a nap,
I'm tired in the sense that these things have to be political. But I don't want. I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole. I will say though, my choice, my vote. Did I say that weird? Vote. My vote was slightly political, but it was not in the sense of politics. I voted for the Star Killer. Mm-hmm. Even though I really wanted Dengar.
It is. You mean Anakin Starkiller from the original, the Star?
No. It's what's his real name? It's Starkiller. It's the character from the Force Unleashed games.
Oh, and initially when I saw people saying vote for Starkiller, I was like, you want them to make a toy out of the planet? I didn't get it, and then I just assumed it was Anakin Starkiller.
And really, what it was is I only did it because it's the only. I think it's the only character. It's. Like I said, there's video games. I think there's a comic for it. And there was a couple books, which I think were just the story of the game told in a book form. But it's voice and mocapped by Sam Witwer, who's a big star. He's kind of whatever they call it. I don't even know how they decide. It's he's very involved. He was an extra auxiliary voice in The Force Awakens, and
yeah, he does voices on Rebels. He used to do voices on Clone Wars. He
plays Darth. He plays Darth. Yeah, he's Darth Maul on Rebels,
and he did the Emperor on
Rebels.
and Maul on the Clone Wars. He's very much present within the orbit of people who do Star Wars things.
And honestly, I don't know the guy. I just thought it would be he seems like a good guy, and he really, really knows his Star Wars. If you're looking for a weird, not weird, but if you're looking for something a little different, he does the Rebel Force radio guys. He's done commentaries of all seven Star Wars films.
People defer to his expertise.
I don't agree with every one of his insights, but they are completely well thought out insights. He's not just shooting from the hip, which I do sometimes. But it's like I really respect him as a fan. And I thought it's like he's the only guy that hears well, unless the Dengar guy's around. I don't know. I don't know who played Dengar. It would have been a nice thing. To me, it's like then that way. But these things are not. That's why I think it's like strange that they had an election. It's like well, just tell us. Are they really that worried about making these things that they're afraid that they won't sell? But anyway, he didn't win, and I feel bad. But it's like that was. As like at the end of the day, it's like I'm probably going to buy the Lando. I'm going to violate my no humans thing and probably get the Lando, and I'll probably get the Tusken Raider. Probably. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to buy toys. Why am I doing this? I kind of
right.
I mean, like I only have so much shelf space. I was listening to, I listen to these guys. Sometimes I'll listen to these toy podcasts, and it's like they just buy everything,
right?
And I'm like, where do you have the room? It's like I spent 2 years getting rid of all my Star Wars stuff for all the excess stuff. I'm like, oh, why do I need this? And then I get down to nothing, and then I'm like, every time I see something, I'm like, do I want that on my shelf? That actually brings up a funny anecdote I have from this weekend. So like I said, I've been kind of not collecting in the sense, but I've gone back and kind of re-enjoying some of my toys from childhood. And I bought like a display, and I have in it, but my whole thing was like, I have this goal now where it's like, I think I want to buy, loose. I don't need them on cards, and I don't need them pristine, but I kind of want all the original from 1977 to 1985 Kenner Star Wars figures. And I'm about halfway, a little over halfway through, and I haven't really added to the collection in quite some time because I've been lazy. But what I did do, I kind of re-going through my stuff as a kid, because I used to think, I realized a lot of some of my like the actual ships and stuff that I had, or some of the like the early ones, like your X-Wings and the TIE Fighters, they're like, I let my nieces play with them, and so they were pretty trash before. They're super trash now. Yeah. But some of the other stuff that I may have bought later on when I was like 10 and like kind of starting to get out of toys, where I would have bought them and then maybe not have played with them, they're actually in really good shape. So like I got like here in my office, I've got a B-Wing, and one thing I went and did, I was all excited. I was like, something, Kenner made a really great Y-Wing toy, which it had a great cockpit and actually had a place you could put your droid in it, so you could put like an R2 unit. So if you wanted to use your R2D2, if you wanted to put an R5D4, which I think were the only two droid choices you had for the original Kenner. Yeah. But anyway, so I was all excited, and I realized that like there was the back, the engines, they have like these struts that come off. But when I pulled it out of storage, I realized like everything is here except for that one strut. And so I was very pleased that I remembered like where the strut was, and I put it together, and I was bragging like it has all these little pieces that could fall off. And I'm like, oh my God, I've kept this thing for 32 years. And okay, it's not pristine, but it's complete. So I was very pleased. I'm like, I'm going to put this on a bookshelf at home and just, enjoy looking at it until I get tired and put it back in storage or whatever. So I take it from my mom's house, pack it up. Oh, and then I found that one of the great little things, it has a bomb where you can you click the bomb on this little clasp on the bottom, and you can actually like fly it. And if you push this orange button, it releases the bomb. And the bomb, I used to even have the bomb. I was so pleased with myself that like not all my childhood toys got trashed. So I pack everything up, put the bomb in the bag or whatever, bring it up, go to set it up, and I go, where's the bomb? Where's the bomb? Where did I put the bomb? Do I remember where I put the bomb? I can't find the bomb. I can't find the bomb. I saved this thing for 32 years. The minute it leaves my mom's house, like one of the pieces is gone. And I'm like, I've dug around. I actually like when I was with my brother, and we made some stops, and I'm like thinking like, oh, do I need to go out to Half Price Books and go to the parking lot? Did it fall out the back? We stopped and got sodas like at a 7-Eleven. Do I need to go out to that 7-Eleven and look in the parking lot for my dropped piece? It's like I have torn apart the bag I took. I've torn apart. I cannot find it. And it's like I've gone on eBay, and it's like it's gonna cost, if I buy one loose, it's gonna cost me $20, and I don't want to spend $20. That's the whole point about enjoying this stuff, and it wouldn't be the thing that I saved for 32 years. So, I wouldn't normally make a request of our listeners, and I don't believe in this stuff necessarily. But if you could spend a minute of your day when you hear this, and like use the Force, put your hand to your temple.
That's not how it works.
Yes, it does. Have like the universe, the secret or whatever, show me where, because there is a chance it maybe fell out of a bag and went underneath something. But I've moved a lot of things. Just like try to find, tell me where. Use your brain and tell me where it is. What was that remote viewing? What was that thing that the Army did back in the 80s?
Oh yeah.
The Menasteric goats. Use your remote viewing powers and find my missile, because it's like, yes, we all have much bigger fish to fry in our lives.
Right.
But it's like 32 years. I take it out of the house, 5 minutes, it's gone. It irks me. It's like, if it had been gone, if I had lost it when I was 9 and it wasn't there, I would have been like, yeah, that's life. You're a kid. You play with your toys. They lose parts. But the fact that I was as a grown ass man, that's when I lose it. It's just like never. That's gonna. Those are the things that frustrate you in life. It's like the little. So like, use your brains and envision where in my house it is, and you can, send us an email, host@talkingbirdcast. You can send us send us a missive and tell me what happened. Where did it go? If you have like the idea like, oh, it's underneath your couch or something.
Yeah.
I've even done the technique that my mom always used to say when I lost things. It's like, ask it where it is. It's like a mental device. And I found stuff just by asking, ask it where it is. And then all of a sudden it occurs to me like, oh no, I put it in this thing. Anyway, that's, if you really want to help the show this week, that's what you can do.
Well, there you go. So we all have some homework to do there.
Exactly.
So the one last, so having gone through all that, the one last toy news, I guess, was Thrawn. There's going to be a Thrawn 3 3/4 inch figure. Are you ready for it?
Yeah, maybe. I have a feeling that that's going to be one of those things that's going to sell really fast and be hard to find. Like, it's
really.
Not, yeah,
I mean, I don't know. I could see that also. I mean, I think initially, yeah, but I could also see that being something that maybe doesn't sell that well. Because again, it's like, who is this? This guy's not in the movies, and he hasn't shown up on the show yet. I don't know. I guess I could see it going either way.
I mean, I guess what I've learned in the last year or so since Star Wars has kind of quote come back is that when you go to Toys R Us, there's a lot of like collectors that kind of
that's true.
They cherry pick stuff because I used to go a couple times a week when I was still looking for looking for a Captain Phasma, and the only other one that I was curious was like there was a Rey in her second outfit, so the Jedi Steps outfit, and I've still never been able to find it. And I know and you see them on eBay selling for $30 or something like that. So I know that there's always going to be something that the collectors are going to like kind of grab, like, oh, there's 4 of them. I'm going to grab all 4 and put them up, And I think Thrawn is totally a character like that collectors are going to grab for speculating on the value. That's how a lot of times these guys pay for their guys and girls pay for their collections is that they grab up a few and then they sell a couple at a profit to pay for their, Constable Zuvio that they didn't really want to buy, but they're going to have to because they need to have it for the collection. Which
again, those, the 3 3/4 inch, those are available for like $2.75 on Amazon now. Yeah,
I know. It's kind of like, it's the kid. I don't think kids are just, I think maybe that informs a little bit why Hasbro is a little cautious with their Black Series, and the fact that like they know that they're not doing great. 3 3/4 aren't doing necessarily that great with people. I've seen, I've even seen the Black Series like Flame Trooper and the Snow Trooper. I've heavily discounted. I just wonder. I wonder if like just kids of, they're already kind of like, and I might be. Where was this in your notes? There was something about, the walking at the AT.
The AT-ACT.
Which is kind of basically a modified AT-AT.
It's an AT-AT with like a cargo bay.
Yeah, and it's got like an orange thing, which I guess that means it's some kind of different. It shoots Nerf darts. Is my point? Is the fact that they're really trying. They're not. They are trying to court, young kids with kind of a more like, oh, this thing has a second function, that kind of idea. So it makes me wonder like how many actual kids are buying these, and it's just a bunch of like childless nerds with like disposable income, and I'm pointing fingers back at myself, that kind of idea. But it's still fun. My only concession is like, guys, take it out of the box. Don't leave them hermetic. Enjoy them. That's because to me, like the whole idea that it shoots Nerf is just like, ugh. I don't like that. I don't like super deformed figures. I'm not a fan of pops or whatever. Is that what those things are called? Yeah, the ones that are like have the big head.
The Funko Pop, yeah.
Funko Pops. I don't like Funko Pops, and I have my own things that I like, and I wonder, and like I said, I wonder if they're discounting them like so quickly. I mean, I could never. Star Wars toys did so well. It's like they weren't discounting Star Wars toys until like 84, 85. And then you were able to get, I turned down a chance to get an Imperial shuttle for $15, but I'm still kicking myself. But of course I would have had to have dragged that around every place I've lived for the last 30 years. But, I don't know what my point. I don't know what my point is on that.
No, that's all right. I guess the other panel that made some big news at Comic-Con was the publishing panel. Most of it was stuff about new books for younger readers. There's going to be an adult coloring book, which I guess depending on what parts of Twitter you frequent, that kind of like adult color therapy, or I can't remember what it's called. That got popular for a little while. Of people go like, oh, it's so relaxing to just like color a picture for a while, to relieve stress. So I guess maybe they're tapping into that. They showed the cover of the Art of Rogue One book, which is K2SO in the foreground, the U-Wing in the background, which is that new ship. I can't remember if we've discussed the fact that it was actually called the U-Wing.
No,
which I think got briefly announced at Celebration, or maybe not. They didn't like make an announcement of it, but someone just made a reference to it, like, "Oh, here's the U-Wing" in one of the art panels or something. Like, oh, I guess that's called the U-Wing. But it's the thing that has kind of the like X-wing engines, and a snow speeder or a Y-wing cockpit, and then like two huge blades shooting out of the front of it. Okay,
which they stopped using at some point because we never see it ever again.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean, this is the same thing I say about like the Death Troopers and the Tank Troop, whatever else. It's like, okay, I understand you want to diversify these things, but at a certain point, they have to come up with a logical explanation for like, so why weren't there U-Wings at the Battle of Yavin or at the Battle of Endor, or why didn't Darth Vader just take some Death Troopers and like kill everyone that way, or like why didn't we see these things in movies that occur chronologically at a later point in time. So, yeah, I mean, I guess a U-wing, sure. Okay.
Yeah, I know. I guess it's they want to sell a toy. They want to.
I don't even know if they want to sell a toy, but I think it's like, every Star Wars movie now we need to bring new designs into it, and so let's design a new spaceship. But it's Rebel Alliance. They don't have a lot of money. Let's cobble a ship together out of parts of other existing ships. It's like, yeah, I get the logic behind it, but again, like, so why don't we see the ship anymore in any other context?
Yeah,
like,
so
the story reasons behind it are more kind of what annoy me a little bit.
So that there's that scene, that kind of a leaked picture of the filming of a crashed ship for Rogue One on a beach.
Mm-hmm.
Do we know that? Does that kind of look like that's the U-wing?
Oh, it could be a U-wing. I just assumed it was an X-wing, but it could be.
Maybe it's a prototype, and that's they crash it, and they go, "Yeah, we just tried that. This is a prototype for a ship, and it doesn't do very well, so they don't decide to mass produce it." There's not going to be 500 of them. They made one.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, this image is now a little more prominent, but maybe they only have like 3 of them.
Yeah, it's like the idea that maybe the Death Troopers were all on, whatever happens in Rogue One, they were on R&R on the Death Star when it blew up, and that's why we never see him again.
Yeah,
it's like, you guys take a break. You guys did really well, kind of.
Yeah,
but I don't know. It's that. Well, I mean, it does kind of fall in line with the idea of kind of design-wise about how Star Wars was done in the past. It's like, Empire came out, and then instead of having the TIE fighters, there was the TIE interceptors with the kind of the more angular, and the TIE bombers, and they didn't really. And then, of course, by the time they did Jedi, there was the Imperial shuttle, which they hadn't. They only added the shuttle in the special edition, so it's kind of confusing now, because now it's like, you go, what do you mean it's an Empire already? And it's like, yeah, well, they added that way later. It's before, it was like they would always try to add 1 or 2 new ships, and I think that's that's kind of something that is kind of falls in the camp of Jim Cameron's criticism of the design of The Force Awakens. Like where he doesn't address that specifically, but the idea that there wasn't really anything, like they literally just kind of used a redesign of the X-Wing from Ralph McQuarrie's sketches and threw a paint job on it. It's like the ships that they show, a lot of the ships, the TIE fighters are pretty much the same design with just some modifications and whatnot. It's kind of So that was one aspect that they didn't really get to explore in the Force Awakens. So maybe they want to exploit it fully in Rogue One if they can. But yeah, like I said, it does cause kind of weird logistical issues.
Yeah, and then I don't know. There were just a couple of odds and ends I thought were kind of interesting. So they said we'll find out more information about the Thrawn novel in October at New York Comic Con, but then they had it was just sort of a general publishing panel. So they had I guess someone from Marvel there talking about the Han Solo comic, which is right now it's very good. But I just thought it was interesting that they said that the artist for that comic used shots from Indiana Jones as references for Han Solo's poses more so than Star Wars. And I mean, it makes sense to me. It's because, those movies were made kind of around the same time, or at least, the first two were. So, the Harrison Ford would have been roughly the right age to, Han Solo between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back, and Harrison Ford in between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. But then, you just have, I guess with Harrison Ford, you have so many more options and so many more movies from which to draw poses and inspiration and everything. Whereas, for the Leia comic or for drawing Luke in the comics, it's sort of like, well, we have the Star Wars movies.
And we have Under the Rainbow.
Yeah. But that's kind of it. Maybe interviews that they did at the time, but that's just them sitting on couches or whatever. So I think it, and I don't know how much that adds to the fact that the Han Solo comic looks really good. Is having that luxury of having the Indiana Jones movies to draw from, but I just thought it was kind of an interesting tidbit that they threw in there.
Yeah, well, it is for sure that has benefited from it, because right now that's the best thing going.
Yeah,
that they've got.
Yeah.
Well, we're kind of at this point. Do we want to kind of wrap it up?
Yeah, let's call it a show.
We had some comic stuff, but we can definitely do that next week.
Yeah,
I will say that we probably will get to, barring any huge news break, we'll probably be talking about Darth Vader 23 and Star Wars 21. Mm-hmm. So there's some interesting stuff. Just as a teaser, I read Star Wars 21 today, and I have to say I liked it, even though it's kind of a different story, and it's a
departure,
and it raises some questions that we will kind of ruminate on next week. So if you guys want to kind of get ahead of the game and maybe read those, and you can get our input on that. I guess the same old. If you want to talk to us, you can email us at hosts. That's host with an S. at talkingbirdcast.com. We are at Talking Birdcast on Twitter. That was probably the thing. I kind of abandoned the Facebook page. I do apologize. I have softened my opinion of Facebook right now is really low, so I'm just not using it. So yeah. I apologize if you guys were fans of that, but I don't think we really did enough of it to really make it anything. So, but you can email me, and maybe it should be if it's something important to you, which I kind of think it isn't. You can email us, and maybe we'll reactivate it or something.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to help out the show, hey, you can. If you're an Amazon.com user and you're like, hey, I'm buying stuff anyway. You'd want to buy this on PSN, so you probably wouldn't want to use Amazon if you wanted to buy that season pass. So, but if you are an Amazon user, if you go to www.talkingbirdcast.com/Amazon before you shop at Amazon, it takes you to Amazon, and what it does is it kicks back a little bit of your the proceeds of your purchase to us to help, and that's paid by Amazon. That doesn't come out of your end, so it doesn't cost you anything else. It's just a nice way to help support the show, and you guys have been doing it, and I do appreciate it. I think
absolutely.
I think that's a bit. Do you have anything that you need to add?
No, I think that's it.
All right. Well, I think we talked about a lot today, and I think it's time to get on with the rest of your day. So, for Talking Birdcast, I have been Robert Zachary.
I'm still John Llewellyn.
Thanks for listening, and may the Force be with you.